good evening and welcome for the very last time of the Magpie Circle for the 2021 season. We're joined tonight by record club goal scorer, fresh from the golf course, Les Bradd. Les, good to see you.
Good evening, Paul. Good to be with you again. And the golf wasn't too good today, by the way.
Well, you got beat last Thursday as well, didn't you?
Yeah, we'll keep that one quiet, won't we?
About 5-4, I think it was.
Yeah.
And former club PR man, now part of the Gerrit Forward crew, Dane Vincent. Good to see you, Dane.
And you guys, nice to see you.
Yeah. So while Les and I have been out on the golf course, presumably you've been down the Cornish coast surfing with that haircut, yeah?
Yeah. Not quite, unfortunately. I've been filming inside today, so not quite that lovely sunshine that everyone else was probably experiencing.
Very good. And a good evening, says Stephen Orton. Can't believe it's the last Magpie Circle of the season. With all this time freed up, I'm worried my wife will start giving me a jobs list. Hurry up and come back soon. We shall be back probably about mid-July. We'll work out exactly when we know when Notts are back for pre-season training. The National League season starts, I think it's around about August the 21st. On the show, the final show tonight, send in your highlights of the season. Worst bits, best bits, and we will discuss and debate those. Main talking point this week after the exit at the hands of Torquay on Saturday has been the club's retained list, which was announced yesterday. And the consensus among everyone, I think, is that kind of 95% of people agreed with 95% of who was released, who was offered new contracts. Les, I think probably the biggest talking point about the retained list has been the release of Enzio Boldewijn after the best part of 3 seasons with the club. Enzo is clearly a very, very popular player among his teammates and among fans. Were you surprised or not by that decision?
Not really surprised. Possibly for the past 6 or 7 games, he very few games he started. So maybe the manager, I don't know, has been feeling that he doesn't really fit into possibly what he's looking for. We don't know yet what Ian's preferred, shall we say, setup's going to be. He came in March, was it? And he's looked at the players and he's sorted a squad out, what he thinks or what he thought would get promotion and play a certain way. And it was exciting football, to be honest with you, in most of the time. We sort of came unstuck a little, shall we say, against more physical teams that didn't play a lot of football and got the ball in the box. We suffered a little bit there. But Enzio, to me, his best position is playing wide on the right, taking people on and getting balls in the box. And when he's being used to do that, he's been very effective. Neil and Ian have played him in different positions, and he's found it very difficult to perform at that. In those different positions. To me, he's out and out playing right and delivering balls into the box.
Yeah,
so it wasn't a surprise.
Yes, and I think some of the points that you've raised there, Les, Ian's addressed. He's done a press briefing this afternoon. Not all of that interview has been made public yet, but there is a snippet talking about Enzio, and Ian kind of says exactly what you said there. Ian was kind of saying that he's had to shoehorn Enzio into a position on the right wing back that's probably not his natural forte. And I guess that will spark debate among supporters as to whether he's going to stay with a 3/5 at the back, or whether it would be a 4-4-2 or 4 at the back. But certainly that Ian was alluding to that he's perhaps not been able, with the system that he wants to play, been able to accommodate Enzio into that lineup. Dane, fans' perspective on Enzio, what's your take?
Obviously, sad to see him go because he's an exciting player. Scored lots of good goals. Often at times struggled to make an impact, whether being played out of position or just not having an impact on the game. But I mean, there's those dazzling moments. You see his highlights reel. It's stunning. I genuinely think he'll go to a Football League club, whether it be League One or League Two.
Do you? Do you really think he'll go? I
genuinely think he'll potentially League One. You never know, do you? Like, you see his ability over the years. Some people see his highlights reel and you think he must have something. And I do think there is more to come from him. And I genuinely think a club like that could take a punt on him, and he could shine in that league. I expect him more to go to League Two. But at the same time, he was on one of those contracts that Alan Hardy would have probably dished out. And you think, can you free up his wages? Can you bring in some players that better fit the system? And you could probably bring in two good players for probably what he was on. So I get why he's gone. It's disappointing, but I think we're in a good position overall as a squad. And I think if they open up a bit of budget by letting him go, then hopefully we can bring in a couple of recruits that better fit the system and can really help us kick on next year. I'm just a little bit gutted that we didn't manage to keep hold of Sam Osborne, because I think another season on, I think he could have been a real key player for us, especially in this system. And if we'd have just managed to keep hold of him under Ian Bircham, I think he'd have been quite a key figure for us. And I still pretty much resent that we let him go when we've now let Enzio go, when we could have had a young player coming through and stepping into that regular first team role. But I'm sure they'll be heavy on the recruitment, looking for players that can better fit the system and hopefully help us improve what is a good solid base for next year.
I think, and lots of questions coming in here already. Ian Birchinall, I have no issues with those released and offered new contracts. Now intrigued to see who we get in. John Parsley was surprised by the decision to offer Adam Chickson a contract. Pythagorean says that as far as he was concerned, the biggest decision, hang on, you're rattling is. As soon as I start reading them out, there's a whole rush of them coming. Pythagorean says biggest talking point can be argued whether if playing 3 at the back, are the back 3 going to be good enough defensively against our weakness to the high ball? Good question, and I think we'll discuss that whole, if it's 3 at the back with potentially only one recognised centre-back, or it has been this season. John Collins will discuss this as well. Critical decision. Will Doyle accept the role of assistant coach? Here we go. Andrew Hillman, who has worked at club after 4 great seasons at Notts as masseuse and assistant on training days. I'm moving back south to be with my family. I'll miss Notts and everyone there. Great show, keep it up, come on you pie. So that's from Andrew Hillman. I'm sure on behalf of our show and all Notts fans, thank you for your service over the past 4 years, Andrew. Pythagorean, need height in midfield too. A Neil Bishop type to help in the defensive set pieces too. Neil Bishop, friend of the show, been on a few times. Pythagorean agrees with Dane, Sam Osborne. A.D. Clark, with a fit Roberts, couldn't see Enzio starting regular, so understand why he's gone. Heard rumour Chesterfield looking to sign him. Duncan Comrie, as good a player as Enzio is, we need players that are a threat in 80 to 90% of matches, not 30 to 40%. I'll be interested to see, Les. Dane's mentioned about Enzio catching the eye and getting back into the Football League. The reality is we've not had one player from our squads in the 2 seasons in the National League move back up into the Football League. Money's tight in the Football League. I will be interested. one of your old teammates, Brian Stubbs, when we did the podcast with him, he has that saying, doesn't he, about the flair players. And I think you will remind me of who it was. He described him as 1 game in 3, didn't he? Who was it? Was it Ian Scanlon? I'm being generous to him. Was Ian like 1 in 6? But remember, Stubby, 1 in 3 was his saying, wasn't it? And his kind of inference there was that you play really well in 1, but you don't necessarily always get the best out of them in another 2. Is Enzio that type of player or not?
Well, Brian's talking about the Jimmy Cyril days, and Jimmy Cyril wanted a 7 out of 10 minimum from each player every game, which would win us the game. My experience of watching football in the National League over the last 2 years and looking at the teams that have been successful is that they don't play a lot of football in the midfield areas. They're very strong in both boxes. And that is something that we have got to improve on. We've been conceding too many goals, and you ain't going to win matches by winning them 5. You ain't going to get out of a league winning games 5-4. You win games 1-0, and you know that's the way forward. Be great to score lots of goals each week, but I'm sure Ian, as through his experience of the National League that he's had so far, will have seen Hartlepool. He went up there and he saw how they played. And I went down to Torquay on Saturday, and Torquay's warming up program, there were 6 players that I watched, all over 6'2", and balls were being kicked and thrown, and they were running and jumping as high as they could and heading the balls. I turned around to a colleague and said, "You know what we're going to see today?" And you know, how many goals did they score? Balls going in our box that we didn't defend, and we've got to get better at the back. You know, we've got to be difficult to score against, and we've got players that are capable of scoring goals at the other end. And I don't see that as too much of a problem. But we've got to come up with you know, better protection of not conceding goals.
That's a very good point. I'll come to Dane and we can discuss the whole principle of defending balls into the box. 3 at the back with potentially, or this season, only 1 recognised centre half at times. When Connell didn't play in 1.5 games of the playoffs. We'll come to that in a moment, Dane. Kelvin Hallam, have players who've been offered an extension accepted to stay? Just to kind of clarify how it works, you know, with a retained list and what happens. So players are made the offer of a contract, or they are allowed to leave. So if they're allowed to leave, then they exit the club. That's it. Although in some cases, if they don't get a club or get fixed up, they would sometimes come back and join pre-season training if the manager is happy for them to do that. What we're talking about here are the group of players who have been offered new contracts. Just because they've been offered it doesn't mean they are staying. So what will happen with those players is that they will sit down with their agent and they will discuss whether they want to accept Notts County's offer to stay, which will be on different terms to what they've previously been on. Some cases it's more money, other cases it's less. And clearly, given what's happened with COVID, I've read a report whereby certainly at the bottom end of the National League, player salaries have gone down by roughly 30%. Once you sign a player on a fixed term of a contract, you cannot then vary his salary. So you can only change these when they're out of contract and you offer them a new one. So in the cases of the likes of Adam Chickson, Connell Rawlinson, they will now be also assessing what other clubs can make them offers. They're free to talk to any and all clubs. And so clearly the agent will talk with other clubs, and then the player has a decision to make, and he can go wherever he wants. Just because Notts have offered a new contract doesn't mean he's going to stay. If someone else offers a lot more money, it might be closer to home or whatever. And unless the player is really set on staying at the existing club, this process normally takes several weeks while the agent, if you like, checks out to see what else there is and there isn't. The reality is a lot of these discussions will have already taken place before the retain list was given. So that's what's going to happen. So everybody we've offered terms to would sign. Technically, and I'm sure this wouldn't happen, all of them can go somewhere else. There is no contract in place. Dane, let's have a look at Les's point. We conceded 6 goals in 2 playoff games. We finished the season overall with that run coinciding with Michael Doyle coming in very well. But we did end up playing with the back 3 with only one recognised centre-half, Mark Ellis, who was on loan. Richard Brindley, Adam Chickson were, if you like, normally play at full-backs, wing-backs, were brought into that 3. And Ian has alluded to the debate here where, yes, we need to defend better. So therefore, you think of the 6'3", 6'4" stereotypical English-style centre-halves who can kick it, but counterbalancing that against the ability for his central defenders to be able to play the ball out, which is kind of part of the philosophy that he wants to implement and bring in here. Where are you on this debate? For instance, how important is it to re-sign Mark Ellis? Do you think we would continue with potentially a Chickson and a Brindley filling some of those places, or do we need to have more tried and trusted conventional central defenders in a 3 if that's how he's going to play?
So in the final running of the season, I thought the fullbacks playing centrally worked better because we were able to play out a lot more comfortably. Those two, Adam Chickson, Richard Brindley, looked really assured on the ball, more so than I thought Connell Rawlinson. I mean, I did like that, but then when you take into account the height in our own box, it's difficult, isn't it? Because the height of those 2 players, the aerial presence of those 2 players isn't as good. And Mark Ellis was there was a lot of pressure on him to win every single ball in the box, and obviously that's not possible. You look at then when you add in Dion Kelly-Evans, it's another more lack of height. Miller wasn't the biggest, so you take into those, and they're marking the far post, you become a target. So I think ideally you maybe have someone like Lacey who can play out in there, and we might see that next season. It's just obviously he's spent a lot of his time out of the team due to injury. So whether you could find another player like Lacey who can play out but could maybe stay fit, or hopefully he can stay fit next season, I think it could work really well. But I mean, I have no issues personally of playing Brindley and Chickson in that role. I just think the ability to play out was so much better. And but if you can find someone who can do both, it's obviously a big ask, because it's not, you don't see too many ball playing centre halves at our level. You see quite a few head it and kick it. And I imagine if they weren't, they'd probably be playing higher up the pitch and higher up the leagues. And I spoke about Sam Osborne earlier, and I think someone like Pierce Bird would have fitted in really nicely on the left side of the back 3, because he could play out. He wasn't. He could head. Yeah, and it's another one because he wouldn't. I don't imagine he was on big wages, and we let him go. And I just think it's sometimes the wages against the ability and the promise of the player. I think he'd have been a player that Ian Birchner would have probably liked in the same fashion as Sam Osborne. And I feel like as a club sometimes we regret these decisions to let players go like that. But I think if you can find someone who can play out and has got the height to command a bit as well, then it could be a system that could be great for us. I think Ian Birchner was kind of forced his hand a little bit. He really wanted to play out, so I think he made the decision to pull those centre halves in. But whether we see that next year, maybe at times, but I think he'll try and get a recognised centre half who can do a bit of both. Maybe a left-sided one, because obviously Connor Rawlinson, if he stays, he can do that. Maybe not in the same manner as the fullbacks, but he can play out quite well for this level, I think.
You don't see, even in this day, I mean, clearly you were brought up on Needham and Stubbs, Les, and there weren't too many better central defensive pairings than that. If you look at the National League, most clubs have some big guys at centre half and look to capitalise on set pieces, putting balls into boxes. So I guess irrespective of the philosophy of Ian and how he's looking to play, possession-based game, that sort of thing, do you think we need to significantly improve on our ability to defend the ball into the box in whatever format that comes?
Well, certainly we've got to improve on our defensive record. We've conceded far too many goals, and that has come from delivering balls into the box and people being able to out-jump our defenders and score goals. So we've got to do something about that. As I say, I don't know what Ian's preferred setup is, whether he wants 4 defenders with two big defenders at the back, like we had in our successful days in the 70s with Needham and Stubbs, you've already mentioned. You know, Ryan Kilcline was a big man in moving on, wasn't he? I honestly believe that you have got to shore up that centre of the goal. Most goals are scored at all levels of football, from the 6-yard box to the penalty box, in that central position, from balls coming into the box, and they've got to be cut out. We're conceding far too many. Whether that's a change of system, playing 4 at the back, or whether it's 3 at the back, we've got to do something about it to get better.
You can't go anywhere in Nottingham, Les, without the Magpie Circle listenership and viewership keeping their beady eyes on you. So Tim Allsop wants to know, does Les still go down the cuckoo bush at Gotham with his dog? I used to bump into him on a Tuesday when they had a free buffet.
No, I used to go out there, meet up with the guy that he was the secretary of my testimonial fund, a big friend. Sadly, he passed away a few years ago, and carried on visiting his wife, but not been out there for a few years now. Must go out at some stage.
Very good. Another big talking point is Michael Doyle. So results took a massive upturn after the departure of Maurice Ross. None of us actually know how much coaching input Michael Doyle had, but clearly he was a link between the head coach and the players, a conduit, if you like. Eyes and ears on the pitch. Don O'Riordan would always say he was the eyes and ears of Neil on the pitch when he was playing. So he has been offered the assistant head coach on a formal, permanent basis. And the phrase that has been used by the club is that he will continue to be registered as a player, Dane. To you, what is the importance of Michael Doyle, both from an assistant head coaching capacity, and although I don't know how we read the statement, whether it's Michael still being registered as a player, but not necessarily being first choice. What's your take on that decision by the club?
Well, he's going to be another year older, but I say that, but I still think he looked I still feel like he had the most legs on the pitch in the game against Torquay towards the end, when everyone seemed a bit heavy-legged. But at the same time, it's more his dressing room influence. He's clearly highly respected by the players in the dressing room, and I wonder whether I imagine he's the leading force in sort of. I imagine he led the dressing room through the Maurice Ross situation, and I imagine that he's just well respected. And I think he's probably a good link between the manager and the players in that capacity as well. And personally, I'd love to see him stick around in that role. Do we see him morph into that bit part player where we bring him in key situations? Maybe when you're holding out for a win, you get him in, calm the nerves, settle down. It's all dependent on the recruitment, really, for me. If we can bring in players that maybe got more legs, who can play a bit more? Do you drop Jake Reeves into that, the Michael Doyle role, and then build around that? It's I guess only time will tell, but I do hope he stays more from a dressing room influence perspective than anything, because I do feel that he's a real big figure for us, and I feel like he shares those managerial. I imagine he shares that managerial burden in terms of the man management of the players, and I feel like he's a good sounding out guy in that dressing room.
Do you think Michael, who is the ultimate competitor, Les, you think he's ready to hang his boots up and not play on a regular basis or not?
I'm pretty sure that's been going through his mind, but there's only he will know that. On the training ground, I don't know about this last year, but the year before, he was the man that the others had to beat. He was the quickest on the training ground. And his attitude, he comes in the morning, he works his socks off, he goes and trains in the gym before the training session begins. He's a role model, and players come in and they look up to him. And a little bit similar probably in my day with Don Masson. Don Masson did so much out of the training session for the group to get himself better, practicing free kicks, running, you name it. Don was doing that, and he had the utmost respect of all of the playing squad, and I think that's what you've got at Notts now. Michael will obviously be considering what he's going to do going forward. This is a great opportunity for him if he wants to cut his teeth into coaching. I don't know. I haven't spoken to him about it, but yeah, it's an opportunity, and it seems to have worked well in the club because, like you say, Maurice Ross left and Michael became the assistant. He was, I would imagine, there was an influence in the dressing room, and maybe the players had to be a little bit careful, shall we say, because it could get back to the boss if they were speaking in front of Michael. So it seemed to work and work really well. So something he must be considering.
We spoke about the defence. Sam Slocombe, Dane, when he came back, looked a lot more assured. He is one of the players that has been offered a contract. Personally, I would be surprised if we are the only offer that he gets. How important is Sam, do you think?
I think he's massive. He's been the best keeper we've had in a long time, and I genuinely think if we'd have signed him a year earlier, when we got dropped out of the Football League, if he was in that side then, I don't think we'd have gone down. He commands his box to a respectable degree. He's a good shot stopper. He's an all-round keeper, and that was severely lacking the year we went down. And I genuinely believe he's good enough that he would have kept us up that year. He'd have, I hate to point fingers really, but keepers like Ross Fitzsimons, they just weren't dominating the box, and I think that's almost more important than actual shot stopping in professional football in a lot of respects. And I think the way his all-round game is, I think we're very, very lucky to have him. He was a great signing for us, and I really hope that we can tie him up for at least a couple more years, because he's a brilliant keeper at this level. And but yeah, like you say, I think there's definitely going to be teams in for him, but I just hope we can keep him.
A few comments and observations. There's a big debate, isn't there, about whether Ian is going to go with 3 at the back or whether it's 4. Rui Thacker says, when you look how small the pitches are away, we couldn't play our wide style game, whereas when we were at home we dominated. Seen some photos today. I think the best part of £100,000 is being spent on the pitch, courtesy of Lifeline. So it looks a little bit like Skeggy Beach at the moment. I'm sure it won't in a couple of weeks' time. Kelvin Hallam, I feel we need better fullbacks who will stop the crosses and put their bodies on the line. At least in the new season, we will see Ian's preferred setup. Pythagorean, would Kyle Hudlin Solihull's 6'9" tall striker. Remember him playing for us against Solihull earlier this season, being an attacking option. Would Eli Sam be transfer listed? Paul Smith, Journo, don't look too concerned, Dane. This is the summer where we know if the recruitment model works. Ian Burchnell Slocombe has been a great keeper for us, so need him to sign. I think among fans, Les, there was certainly a school of thought which said there could be a massive clear out of players, and the money ball stroke data ball approach could then, the decks would be cleared and there'd be a whole stream of players coming in, and I think the near universal positivity, or there is near universal positivity about the fact that a large core has been kept, or offers have been made to be kept. Some of the challenges of Notts in recent times, Sean Derry, people around him would say the rug was pulled under his feet, with all the better players being kicked out after they'd stayed up. Ricardo Moniz would point a finger at Guy Branston implementing the owner's philosophy of changing the players. Do you view, like the rest of us, it's a positive step that we're largely looking to keep a core group of players that played this season?
That's a difficult question. As I say, I've not really spoke to Ian too much about going forward. It's always been about getting promotion this year. I do know that the owners are very, very keen to get a squad together for the first day of pre-season, so that they can do a full pre-season and that can hit the ground running come the first match. There's no changes needed to be made. So whoever that involves, I can't answer. Recruitment must be so difficult, bringing in new faces into the group this year, because we've had an unusual season, because we've been playing football without fans there. Some players can perform without players, other players can't perform. So you could be bringing in a player who's going to be, shall we say, when it comes under the cosh of the crowd and shouting on behind, getting behind them, that can't cope with it. So there's a lot of variables just at this moment in time. So I'm pretty sure that he will keep a squad of players that he's got belief in, that they can do what he expects them to do, and he's going to add to that. That's my feeling.
When we had Kevin Nicholson on last week, Dane, and I asked him about how the momentum we've garnered this season in the final 10 games or so, how important do we carry on from that next season because of the way we finish the season? Or is it a case that actually it don't make a blind bit of difference because all the squads are chucked up in the air? It's a different season next season. There is relegation next season. There are different clubs coming down. And Kevin's point, answer to that, was that if you keep a core group of players, it's important. If you rip it all up, it doesn't make a blind bit of difference. What are your thoughts?
I'm a fan of keeping the core group together. I like the approach of keep what's working and tweak what's not. Adjust a little bit at a time. I'm not a big fan of the whole wholesale change historically for Notts. I think whenever we've done wholesale change, it's very rarely worked, other than maybe there was quite a big turnover in the Munto season perhaps, but that was a bit different because of the players we were bringing in. It was almost a cheat code. But if you look even back to 97, 98, I think we were relegated with a bunch. They may not have been good for that level, but I think Big Sam tweaked it. He saw what was good. He tweaked it, brought in a few players where we needed it, and we went on to do a record-breaking season. So, and I just think that we're not far off at the minute. Looking at under Ian Burchnell for Notts, we're not far off it. And I think look at what's not working, tweak it, and let's push on again. If we do wholesale changes, you don't know what's going to happen. Players are learning how movements and learning how each other play again, and you never know how it could go. It could go one way or the other. But I'm all for just tweaking and seeing where it takes us. Gradual improvements, and we're eventually going to get there. You see, even at the highest level with Liverpool, Jurgen Klopp, when he just made minor changes. He saw that they were weak in certain areas. He adjusted it. And over time, they became an incredible force. And I just think if you do that at every level, just fix what's maybe not working. And over time, I think you'll eventually get there.
Mark Stallard, always good value, Les, in the show on Monday, he said he would like to see 1, 2, and the 2 will be obviously great, but kind of, he used the word marquee signings, players that are in the right position, significantly better, or can materially affect and change games. And I guess there's a lot of clubs looking after those marquee signings. But, he used the analogy of Chesterfield have gone big for Danny Rowe. Stockport went for Paddy Madden. You would imagine Wrexham are going to go big, having brought in Les Reed. Here's the question for you. What part, not asking you to name players, what part of this team group of players do you think, what position needs strengthening most of all? If you can go out and get the right players, where do you look? Where do you think we need to strengthen the most? Is it centre halves at the back? Is it goal scoring capability? Is it centre midfield, more legs in midfield?
I would say that the squad this year to last year, where we got through to the final, we've missed out badly we've lost Christian Dennis, we lost Wes Thomas, experienced players. I'm not knocking Jimmy Knowles, a young lad cutting his teeth, but he's not the marquee player that maybe Mark Stallard talks about, that's been there, done it all. So I'd like to see another player of that nature coming in to support Kyle up front. We also lost Mitch Rose, player that never gets talked about in midfield. Probably not the best passer of a ball, but certainly a player that put himself about, won lots of tackles, broke up lots of play in there. I think we've lost an influential player like him in there. I'd like to see another one coming in of that nature. Other than that, shoring up the defence, stop conceding goals, then we're not far off. It's what Dane was talking about early on. There's not a lot wrong, just a little tweak here and there, and there can be a very, very good squad of players that can get a lot of points next year.
Adi Clark asks a question. I'll go to you, Dane. What's your thoughts on Eli Sam? Had no involvement in playoffs. Like Ruben, with a run of games playing in right position, could things click into place for him? He certainly scored some great goals. What do you think about Eli?
I think he's 90% pub player, 10% world class. You never know what you're going to get. You can spend all game miscontrolling it, and then he'll come up with a moment of magic. For me, he's one of those players, as it stands, based on this season. He's an impact player. If he's on the bench, you chuck him on for last 20 minutes, or if the game's going against you, you could just produce a moment of magic just out of nothing. But at the same time, I sense that under Neil Ardley, he wasn't trusted for like the basics of the game, like holding up the ball or things like not doing stupid things. Highlight back to, I think, a free kick he gave away in one of the games where we then conceded from a set play. So, I mean, if he's sticking around, we might as well play to his strengths. I don't think he's a front man, but he's definitely got abilities, and we could probably use him. He wouldn't be a regular starter for me, but if he's in the squad, I think he could potentially offer something. He's shown, like I say, he's got moments of magic in him. It's just that consistency factor that comes into it. I even talk consistency within a game. 1 minute the ball's bouncing off his shins, the next minute he's back heeling one in the top corner from 12 yards out. So who knows?
I mean, Ruben Rodriguez, who is very much, come on in leaps and bounds under Ian Birchnell, Les. But, we do tend to forget that for probably, 2/3, 3/4 of the season. Ruben found it tough, didn't he? Ruben found it tough.
Yeah, he's come into National League football. It's new to him, and he's certainly got a wonderful touch and great ability, great control. He can see passes. He's a game changer, and they are key players to have in your squad. Maybe just had a few too many games in the last run-in. Needed a little bit of a break to freshen up, but very, very talented player and player you want in your squad.
Few more comments coming in. Chloe Page, pundit with us. Really sorry I couldn't make it tonight, but a massive congratulations to everyone involved with the podcast over the season. It's been an amazing podcast to be involved with. Thank you, Chloe. Ian, I agree with Dane. Evolution, not revolution. Pythagorean. Ruben was the natural 10 all along. Ardley never saw it. That's all part and parcel of our show, isn't it? Forget the professional people that have played and been in it for 30 years. Us people as fans from the terraces who've never managed a Sunday League team know more than the others do. But that's all part of it. That's all part of a part of the debate. AD Clark, interesting to see who signs new contracts. It will reflect the belief and togetherness in the squad. Hope it's sorted quickly, then IB can get the players in he knows will be needed. What is in our favour to try to get things sorted as quickly as possible, and Les has already mentioned this, is that our season starts up to 2 weeks after the Premier League and the Football League. So they're going to be reporting earlier. And, you know, in my time in football, I've heard it so many times. We're going to get all our players in for the first day of pre-season. 99 times out of 100, it never happens. Because what you will have to pay for a player in June is a lot more than you will pay in July. Because in July, they haven't got a club. And this is time immemorial. So to an extent, to get players in early, you will overpay because the agents, quite rightly, are pairing clubs against each other. But in our favour this year, because the Football League and the Premier League are ahead of the National League, normally it's the other way round, that may help us a little bit. But rest assured to the people out there, it is not easy getting players to sign up very, very early, because it is not necessarily in their best interest to maximise their contracts. And they basically have one shot of calling the shots when it comes to contractual negotiations, and that's just before you put your name on the dotted line. Once it's on the dotted line, that's your deal, yeah, and you can't change it. Revolution players Sam, Ruben Knight, Ruben most likely, but long term one may make it at this level. Evolution need another good forward. Defensively need to stop set play goals conceded. I think he's kind of echoing what you were saying there, Les. Let's talk the loans, and the club have alluded to. They are, I think, hope they could get one of the loan players. Realistically, that is going to be either Mark Ellis or Kelvin Miller. Do you have a preference, Dane? If it's one of those two,
I quite like.
The kind of saying it's going to be just the one.
Yeah, I quite like Calvin Miller. I think he fitted into the system. If we're going to go 3-4-3, 3-5-2, however you want to badge it, I think he's a real good fit. I think we do have some good defenders in Connor Rawlinson, Alex Lacey, and I would personally like to see Mark Ellis come into that as well. Whether that's possible, I'm not sure, but I've got a feeling that it'll be Calvin Miller that they're going after. He's been released by Harrogate. I imagine he had a great time at the club, and he's one that I'm hoping of one of those early summer signings. I think hopefully he'll have enjoyed his stay and will want to sign for us. Although I imagine he's another player who will have quite a bit of interest at this level.
Les, who would, if you had a choice? Well, it seems the club is prioritising one of those, one loan player to make permanent. Would you go for Ellis or Miller?
It's an interesting one, and I can't quite get my head around Tranmere releasing a centre half. Thinking they must have a really good squad of players if Mark Ellis can't get into Tranmere's team, because he's certainly performed magnificently for Notts, hasn't he, over the past few games, scoring goals and stopping them. Miller, initially I got a few queries about him, but in the system that we've set up of late, he has just been absolutely fantastic, and he looks to me like he can. And he didn't do it on Saturday quite as much as he normally does, but he drops his shoulder and just kicks the ball, and he's gone past the player, and then he can cross the ball, and he's got so much pace. And any player with pace is definitely a player that you want on your side. So, yeah, if I've got a choice to make, I'm saying that we need another centre half as well to stop balls going in the back of the net, aren't I? So it's a difficult one. Let's hope they both sign.
Diplomacy as always, Leslie. Diplomacy as always. Yeah, I mean, Mark Ellis is an interesting one because, I mean, it's interesting in a way, isn't it, that Ian omitted Connell Rawlinson from a game and a half of the two playoff games. So that would say to you, at this moment in time, he prefers Mark Ellis, although Connell has been offered new terms. Although, as others are pointing out, Kelvin would be more of an age that would potentially fit in on this money ball, data ball, improving player approach. I do think that certainly in the short term, I think that's going to be very difficult at our level to monetize, because to an extent, if you've got a really good jewel like Kel Roberts, we as Notts County fans, you know, imagine, for instance, if someone offered £1 million to Notts County for Kel Roberts in October, we would all be saying, don't sell him. You know, our best chance of getting out of this league, etc., etc. So I think that it would be interesting to understand from the owners whether they look to capitalise and monetize these signings, because it's potentially a double-edged sword while ever we are in the National League, because Richard Montague said it, owners have said it, we need to get out of this league as quickly as possible.
Yeah, it's something when I've asked the owners about it. Do you want to go up this year? And it's not something that they want it to happen, but it's not like, you know, top of they're building a new football club. They're building it with so many things that they want to put into their football club, and I think they will get there. I'm keeping my fingers crossed that they get it right. We look at you know, what they're bringing into the club and the Moneyball system. I don't call it that. They're looking at players, and they've got information on players that they can get into Notts County that would be worth a lot of money. They've done it with Cal Roberts. Brentford, we've seen how good Brentford have operated, bringing players in from London clubs, moving up the league, selling players on, and at the same time still getting promotion. That's to me how to run a football club, and I think that's what our owners want to do at Notts County as well. They want to develop young players who maybe haven't made it at the top level and bring them in and move on from there. And we have a highly successful team, and you know, if you get that at lower level, players are going to move. They're going to go to bigger clubs. That you can't stop that. But if we can carry on and being successful, that's the be all and end all for me. And I've got faith in the owners that is what they're doing with Notts County Football Club.
Dane?
Yeah, I'm encouraged Like another point is like you think about the players that are on the books. Lewis Knight, he's another one. We've not seen a lot of him in the latter stages of the season, but he's another player that could come in and be like a new signing next year, because he seemed unfit when he came in, and I think with a pre-season under his belt, he could be another one that could come in and really light it up. But one of the other questions I've got is, will we be playing 3-5-2, 3-4-3? Because if you think when Cal Roberts is fit, when Ruben Rodriguez is fit, do you maximise it by playing both of those wide of the front man, Kyle Wootton? There's a lot of questions. Maybe we'll be a multi-system team and very difficult to scout in the build-up. That's quite encouraging to me. The fact that we look at it and we can't really see how it's going to be, but I'm sure that Ian Birchnell's shown that he knows he's got a good eye for the tactics side of things, and it'd be interesting to see how he implements that with the array of talent that he potentially has on his hands.
Yeah, I mean, I think round pegs, round holes. There's been no better manager in this country for 4 or 5 decades than Alex Ferguson. And if you remember, there was a celebrated signing of Juan Sebastian Veron, who Argentina World Cup. He was a world-class player, but he was never quite able to fit in to the Manchester United team. Moved on, I forget where he went, and was just and then instantly a world-class player again. And it's all about getting the right type of player into the vision and the formation that the manager or the head coach has. And I think one thing have liked with Ian certainly has been he's had left-sided players playing down the left. And we talk a lot about inverted this, that, and the other. But one of the first things he did, he had Chicks on the left side of a 3, and he had Kelvin Miller left-sided wing back as a left footer. So that he's spoken about that instant balance. So I would be very surprised if Ian does not know exactly the formation and the system that he wants to play, and will therefore be looking to recruit players that fit into that system. Not necessarily, here's a really good player, we'll go and get him, because that might not fit into the system that Ian wants to play. It's getting the right player to slot into that particular peg, because that's the way Ian wants to play. And if you go back in time, Les, to the halcyon days, that was always Jimmy Cyril, wasn't it? He signed the right player to fit in the right place.
Absolutely, and each player will have a respect for the manager. The manager dictates how he wants you to play, and when you see a team, you saw the team change tactics of late with Notts County, and you saw Miller, you saw Chickson looking different players to what they were before. Obviously, that suited them, and they respected the manager's tactics. They enjoyed it, and you could see they were loving the football games that they're playing. And that's when you get that right, you've got a very successful team. When a player's not quite sure whether what he's doing is right or it's wrong, and then they look a yard slower, and it's all down to respect of the manager, and whatever he puts across to you, that you believe in him and that this is the way forward. And then when you've got that, you've got a really good squad of players that can go places.
Some comments and observations, and clearly Enzio splits the fan base. Colin Metcalf, with regards to Enzio leaving, I liked him, but he was on good money. Were we getting value for that money? My view is no, because he was too inconsistent. Paul Taylor, on the other side of the coin, we have lost a 200 grand player in Enzio. Paul also goes on to say we need a quality loan young player like Jack Grealish. One of them would do, wouldn't it? Moddy Moby says, this is a fair point, if these owners are looking for profit, I feel loans will be a thing of the past, as they want to develop their own players, whether buying them in or through the youth system. We're talking about tactics, Les. We're talking about formations. We talk a lot about possession. We talk a lot about statistics, balls played in boxes, and all of those sorts of things. Ultimately, our season's going to be defined by one thing and one thing alone, isn't it? Results.
Yeah, I mean, the only tactics that matter is keeping them out at one end and scoring at the other end. Everything that goes on in between the boxes is neither here nor there. It's pretty to the eye, but you've got to win the battles in both of those areas. And as I said before, teams that are getting promoted through certainly the lower levels of football are getting that right. They're not letting goals in, and they're scoring at the other end. That's what we have got to get better at doing, and the sooner we can do that, then the better.
Dane, you know, with Gerrit Forward representing a large proportion of the fan base, how tolerant or not do you think fans will be next season?
I think Ian Birchnell has now earned a bit of patience. I think, obviously, after that rough start, there was a lot of doubt, understandably. But I think he's swung that around now, and I think he's earned the respect of the fans, and I think he will be given time to get it right and tweak it. I think with the fact that he won't, I don't believe he'll make wholesale changes to this. I think he'll tweak it, and I think that'll allow us to get off on a good start and keep up the momentum. I really do. I know Kevin Nicholson maybe says it's irrelevant, but I just think you keep a core bunch together. I think they can go into the season full of confidence based on how the turnaround came last year. We went from playing really bad football for most of the season to a side that could really, really play and genuinely had a very good chance of going up in the playoffs. And I think the fans will give him the time. There may be times where it's not perfect, but I genuinely think with a good pre-season, I think he's going to get his in a good shape, and fingers crossed we'll hit the ground running. If we just get the right signings in those key areas, hopefully early, fingers crossed. Yeah, we can kick on, and we won't need to test the patience.
ZO is asking us for some predictions. Before we go on to the Euros, Leslie, it's £40 a pop, no concessions at Ashton Gate. Torquay versus Hartlepool. Who are you going for?
I'll go for Hartlepool.
Because?
I just think that they're a little bit more physically stronger than what I saw of Torquay. I wasn't over impressed with Torquay on the game on Saturday. A bit vulnerable. I can see that Hartlepool maybe get 2 or 3 goals. That's my guess. But it's all on the day, isn't it? It's the big, who can rise to the occasion on the day.
Dane? Yeah,
heading into the playoffs, I wanted to avoid Hartlepool from a Notts perspective, based on what I saw this season. I think they got some good talent there, and I think they'll win it.
They have a Nottingham lad in their team, another one that somehow slipped through our net. The lad Mark Shelton. He used to go out to, is it George Spencer School, Towton, Long Eaton Way? Yeah, he's a Nottingham boy. I think it could be a penalties job, I find it very difficult to split them. I think Gary Johnson is a wily old fox, every trick in the book. I know he's not universally popular with Notts fans, and we've had a few scrapes with him at Peterborough and Bristol and all sorts of places. And it's a massively tight call. So I'll go penalties. Toss of a coin. I think maybe Torquay. But we'll see. Euros, Leslie. Euros. Are England going to do it? You're the only one. You're the only one.
You're asking the question to
World Cup, aren't you? Well, for you. 66 when we won the World Cup. What were you doing that day?
I watched the match, sat at home with my mum and dad.
You must have lived in a posh house, because not many people have television sets in 66.
66. I had we had a 12-inch TV when I was the age of 1954. We had our first television, so yeah, it was all right.
You were posh. You was, Les. You was posh.
The first match I saw, Jackie Sewell was playing for England, and he scored a goal. And he became my hero. Little did I know I was going to meet up with him later on in life. But yeah, you're asking the wrong person about Premiership football and international football. I'm not a great fan of modern tactics. The game that I played isn't the game that's been played at the top end today. The VAR, the I call it cheating. I know the pundits saying going down easy, but there's far too many things going off in the game that it just makes my blood curl. Sorry, so I don't watch. I watch the highlights on a Sunday morning, but I get bored of passing the ball around the back. Little excitement. Sorry,
Dane, you're the young generation. What do you reckon
for the Euros?
Mm.
Yeah, I think France will. I think France will win it. They're the best team I've seen so far. I think they're frightening with their pace. England, I'd love to say we do it, and I won't write us off because I think we've got a lot of talent, but I think we're maybe not strong enough at the back as it stands. Be slightly more confident if Maguire comes back in, but it's a case of I think we'll maybe take maximum points in the group, but then we've got the likelihood of facing someone like Germany or Portugal. So and we know how that usually goes. So historically makes me a little bit pessimistic, but we got a good side. We've got a lot of strength in those attacking areas, so who knows?
Well, it's as close as it can be to being a home tournament for, isn't it? And normally a home team would get to the semis. So I'm relatively optimistic. Of the other teams, I agree with you. I think France are the best team. Best teams often don't win it, though, do they? I wonder Italy. You keep a clean sheet, you'll never be far away. And they got 3 in the opener as well. We shall see. Tim Allsop's mentioned Hartlepool, of course. Tom Crawford, not necessarily getting a massive amount of game time, but he is there as well. Final few thoughts, Les. Looking back on the past season, clearly been a very different one to most that we've experienced. Is there a particular high spot or memorable moment for you of it?
Yeah, it's been a difficult one, hasn't it? With COVID, we seem to, we had a bad start with the defeat at Dover, and then we came with wins against Altrincham. We seemed to get going, and then you thought, well, we're going to get up to the top of the league and hold it there. And then the next thing is we're playing away somewhere and going to leave on the Friday, and then the game's off because of COVID. And that seemed to be the pattern. And then, we had the players go down with COVID, and it was stop-start all the way through. It was so difficult. And, I was fortunate to go and see some of the games at home and talking to the players. I'd obviously never experienced playing in an empty stadium, and I spoke to Carl Wotton. What's it like out there? And he says you can't believe it, Les. You score a goal, and because there's no noise, you look round. Has the referee blown the whistle? Is it not a goal? And that's how it was being played. So I felt for them, really. It was up and down, and I felt teams were coming up to Meadow Lane, and they really enjoyed going out there playing at Meadow Lane with no crowd in. And we had a really bad season result-wise, didn't we, at Meadow Lane? For how many games did we lose there over the course of the season? Something unheard of for a long time. And long. Let's hope that we can get big crowds back in again at the start of the next season, that they get behind the lads. We saw Chesterfield where we weren't on our best game, but the crowd lifted us, kept us going, and we were able to get a win at the end. And that's what it's all about. It's about the team and the supporters working together to get the win. So I'm very hopeful that next year, we get a squad back together for pre-season with a few tweaks coming in, 1 or 2, and ready to go, and there's no more issues with COVID, and we can start off on a platform that we can kick on and get up there, and we fear nobody, and get a run going, and everybody dreads coming to Meadow Lane again. That's what I'm hoping.
Dane, any abiding memories of the season?
Probably being back in the stadium as a fan, like when the final home game of the season. A lot of the season kind of blurred together for me watching the streams, so I find it hard to take in a lot of the time. But being back in the stadium as a fan, that was when it kind of hit home that it just like it was emotional, wasn't it, for everyone being back? So that's probably my overriding memory of being away from Meadow Lane for so long and then just being back. That's mine, I'd say.
I think if I could can I just come back in? I didn't answer your original question looking on matches, and there was two key games to me. One was the Dagenham game when Sam got sent off in the early minutes, and we're 1-0 up, and there's a penalty. And I think everybody that's watching on the stream saying, "Oh God, this is one each. There's 85 minutes to play. We ain't going to win this game." And Mark went in goal, and then we looked a better team for the. I actually went and put a tweet out because I've been crying at the end of the game. I got tears in my eyes because I felt for those lads. I thought this was a turning point in our season, that we were going to kick on from there and go and win automatic promotion. But from that point onwards, we had a really bad run, didn't we? I think we lost the next three. We drew on, lost 2 or 3. It turned it round, and then a big game for us, I thought, was Sutton at home as well. You know, when we had we went down to 10 men for the last 20 minutes and went on to win that. We didn't look like we were a player short. We looked like we got more players than them. And then Mark scored that goal late on and against the eventual champions. And I'm thinking, you know, what a performance that was. So there's been highlights here and there, but we haven't been able to maintain long runs, which I think Torquay did early season. You know, Sutton picked it up, didn't they, after a slow start, and they got going. And we never really were able to do that I think COVID had a massive influence with us breaking up at key times. But let's hope we can get back to normality for the start of next season. Everything can be in place. The crowd get behind the club and we kick on from a great start and move on.
Yeah, I think you raise a very good point there, Les. You look at Barrow, who went up. You look at Sutton, who went up. You look at Torquay, who were in top spot for quite a long period of time. They all went on runs of something like, you know, 1 defeat in 17, or, you know, win 8 out of 9. Yeah. And we never did that. We never did that. The best we came was at the end of the season, where we won 4 on the spin, and it was something like 7 unbeaten, and something I'd spoken about and banged the drum for. And I was hoping that, you know, unfortunately we lost to Bromley, but I was hoping that 7 unbeaten, whatever it was, we could stretch to 10 or 11, which, to be fair, you need to do to get out of this division. That we could have extended that through the playoffs. And I think next season, for us to get promoted, certainly to entertain any chance of finishing in top spot, which I think is incredibly difficult, we've either got to come out the traps and lose, you know, one of our first 12, 13, 14 games, or you've got to finish the season a la Paul Cox at Mansfield when we had him on as a guest. And I think Mansfield lost something like 1 out of their last 22 games. Yeah. And for us, you know, let's just put this into context. For us to win the division next year, we're going to have to do that. We're going to have to be having a massively consistent run week in, week out. And that gets back to your point as well, Les, Notts County 0. Because if we don't let a goal in, Jimmy Cyril, DNA of Notts County over the last 50 years, we don't get beat. That's your starting point, isn't it? 1 point. That's your starting point. And I think for us to entertain any realistic ambitions of achieving promotion next season, we've got to do that. We've got to do that. And I think that however we set up, however much possession we have in games week in, week out, because to be fair, both Neil and Ian have probably dominated. We probably have gone 20 games unbeaten in possession, you know, of games. That hasn't always translated into results. Rambling anecdote there. My specific answer to highlight of the season, I think, would be the 90th minute against Chesterfield. You know, the game had everything, and then it has the final twist for us. And to see all the fans up, down, someone's next to me, all fantastic. 90th minute winner. Their manager's in the stand. They've got a goalkeeper that can hardly move. They've been time wasting for I don't know how long. We come back twice. Nathan Tyson, you know, sprinting through at the age of 39. It had everything, and just that final minute of that game is probably a match, actually, irrespective of we hadn't been able to see any in the flesh for a long time, that will live long in the memory of many of our younger generation for sheer drama. So that's probably the high spot. Yeah, the high spot. Moddy Moby says Weymouth was very emotional, a relief, and to see old faces before the game. Goes on, just to see the old faces, and even before the game I was calling and texting everyone to see if they got a ticket or not to meet up before the game for a pint, and being at the Lane watching a game I love. I'm hoping, I don't think it will be too long. I would have thought next week at the latest the club will be announcing season tickets, and I'm hoping that as many of us as possible who can afford it will be buying a season ticket, and I'm hoping as many of us as possible who have the time and the money will also be able to get back on the road to away games, COVID permitting. Les, Dane, all of our pundits for this year, thank you very, very much indeed. You guys donate your time voluntarily, along with a whole raft of other pundits: Mark Stallard, Charlie Slater, Lee Curtis, Beth Curzon, Chloe Page. We've had Neil Bishop on, Kevin Nicholson, others I've forgotten about. Thank you to everyone. Ultimately, this is your show, so you make it what it is. Thank you for sticking with us, for watching all of these. We will be back next year in a similar format. In answer to Ian Birchnell's question that he's just posted, when are you back? We will be back middle of July. We will be back, okay, the same time as when Notts County's players report back for pre-season. Okay, now I don't know when that is yet, so I can't give you an exact date of when we will be back, but we will mirror the season of when the lads are in. We will be on. I think that just about wraps it all up. Those of you watching this live, there's another match for us to all take a look at now. Thank you very much indeed for everything, and we look forward to seeing you all again in July. Thank you for the season.